Hey everyone, after 6 visits and 1 book drunken online shopping, here's my Big Bad Wolf and National Bookstore book haul. So, it's been 2 weeks since Big Bad Wolf left. Sipangs is real, isn't it? How's everyone holding up? I didn't expect to miss or get sad of them leaving, but the people around me wouldn't be surprised if I said that. I managed to visit 6 times within the 10 days they stayed in the metro and bought a couple of books, maybe 60, 70 of them, and thought I'd go through them with you all today. Let's start with book sets. The first book set I picked up was The Best of Paulo Coelho, and it has 5 of his books in it, including The Alchemist. And I've actually read The Alchemist before, or at least a tiny part of it. I'm not sure what happened. I may have been distracted and reread Harry Potter again. But now I'll be able to, and hopefully I get to finish it. Next up is Agatha Christie's The World's Favorite book set, and on her 125th birthday, fans actually had a poll, and these 3 stood out as clear favorites amongst Agatha Christie fans, past and present collecting nearly half the amassed votes between them. So all 3 books represent the pinnacle of crime writing, packed with murder, suspense, and highly original endings that have shocked and surprised readers for decades. They are 3 very different books, but they have one thing in common: the fiendish ingenuity of Agatha Christie. And I'm actually not quite familiar with Agatha Christie or her works at all, but I'm familiar with Murder on the Orient Express. I also didn't know that it was a film adapted from her novel, so I got really curious and picked it up. The last of my purchases is the Maze Runner book series, and I was actually on the fence for the first 5 visits to Big Bad Wolf until the 6th one and finally caved in. I have seen 2 of the, I'm not sure how many movies are out, but I have seen both The Maze Runner and Scorched Trials, and I do like both of them, so I'm not quite sure why I haven't read them yet, given I've also read and loved both Hunger Games and Divergent series, and I think they're on the same post-apocalyptic era. So hopefully it's just as good as the movie, maybe even better, because you know, books are better. Next genre is music, except I've only picked up books related to the Beatles, so I'm not sure it justifies the whole music thing, given that it's not varied at all. Anyway, these are the John Lennon letters, because I'm nosy like that. These are compilations of letters to and from, I guess, John Lennon, and a time feature of Paul McCartney, who is my favorite Beatle, and the Beatles, All You Ever Wanted to Know About the Fab Four. I probably know already what's inside this. I haven't quite counted the number of times I've been to their Wikipedia page or articles that have been... Did you know they had to travel inside boxes or crates to escape the Philippines after they said no to meeting Imelda Marcos? Crazy, right? And there's just so much history around the Fab Four that it's just nice to learn about them and read about them over and over again. Also, if you haven't already, I went to Liverpool a couple of times and visited the Beatles Museum. I went to their childhood homes. I went to the Cavern Club where they used to perform that. And yeah, randastings.com and search the Beatles or Liverpool. Music books, I think, can be great coffee table books, and speaking of which, I picked up 2 coffee table books which had me giggling while reading the preview at the back, and it's actually related, both by the same author, or compiled by the same author, Sean Usher. And first one is Lists of Note. It includes a shopping list written by Tibetan monks, 19-year-old Isaac Newton's list of the 57 sins he'd already committed, Galileo's list of parts needed to build his telescope, Einstein's punitive list of conditions imposed on his first wife, 29-year-old Marilyn Monroe's inspirational set of New Year's resolutions, and a Michelangelo's illustrated shopping list. And here's some of this. This one's Woody Guthrie's Guthrie? Woody Guthrie's New Year's Rulings. And in it includes letters by Jane Austen, Helen Keller, Alan Turing, Albus Dumbledore, Eleanor Roosevelt, Janis Joplin, Wolfgang Mozart, John Lennon, David Bowie, Marge Simpson, and Che Guevara. These next set of books treads along the genres of biography, business, self-help, and memoirs. I went into Big Bad Wolf with a long list of books that I wanted to get, except I didn't see most of them. Probably because they were recent releases, except for this one, The Diary of a Young Girl, which is the story of Anne Frank. And you can't judge me anymore with the 6 visits thing, because if you wanted to find a book, you'd have to visit Big Bad Wolf several times on different days, since they keep restocking new sets of books. And I got really lucky to find this one on the 5th visit among, I think, the 10 last copies of this book. I'm not a big fan of Star Wars. I haven't finished the saga, I'm sorry. But I've always seen Carrie Fisher to be a strong personality, a strong character, and a much loved celebrity. It was just very unfortunate that she was battling, I think, alcoholism, and she talks about that in this book, Carrie Fisher's Wishful Drinking. Next up is I Am Malala, which is the story of Malala. If you haven't heard about her, she was shot in the head and survived. And then after that, she just kept inspiring people on how she really wanted to get education despite the fact that she was in a war-torn country. These next 2 books are memoirs and surround around the topic of death, and I've always been comfortable with talking about that, since I think there's wisdom from the dying. I know it sounds horrible, but if you've read Tuesdays with Morrie, that was the most inspiring book that I've ever read, and still is my favorite book. This one is When Bad Things Happen in Good Beginnings, a story of Helen Bailey, who lost her husband, and this is a story of how he journeyed through her life after inconceivable loss. This one is When Breath Becomes Air, a story or a memoir of Dr. Kalanithi. I'm not sure who Dr. Kalanithi is, but reviews of this book was astounding, so I picked it up. These next 2 books are of the same author, Walter Isaacson, and everyone was raving about him on the comments of the Big Bad Wolf page, so I got really curious and picked up 2. One is Einstein, His Life and Universe, and another is The Innovators, How a Group of Hackers, Geniuses, and Geeks Created the Digital Revolution. And I read the first bit of the sample and I already learned something. Did you know Ada Lovelace was actually a royal? And Lovelace isn't her, well, it's not technically her last name, it's just she's Ada, the Countess of Lovelace. Quite shallow, but it made me pick this book up. Next up is Anxiety for Beginners, and I didn't see a lot of self-help that surrounds around anxiety at the Big Bad Wolf, but yeah, mental health is important. Enough said. The last genre in the Big Bad Wolf book haul is fiction, and of course I picked up a lot under this genre, so I decided to categorize them according to why I picked that up. Actually, I wrote a blog on the reasons why I picked up that book at the book sale, runthesings.com if you haven't read already. So first up is Eleanor and Park, and it's one of the more famous young adults releases recently, along with The Fault in Our Stars. So I actually have read this already, and I'm gonna write a review next week. Every Sunday, starting next week, I'm gonna write a book review. That challenges me to finish a book hopefully every week. Next up is Sophie's World. I don't know if there's a movie about it, but I think there's one, and that's why it's familiar to me. And also number 2 reason is because the cover is pretty. Third is Fight Club, and I haven't seen the movie. But then the number one rule of Fight Club is not to talk about it, so I'm not gonna talk about that. Next is Jodi Picoult's Picture Perfect. This is the same author of My Sister's Keeper, and I love that story, so hopefully this one's good too. Then there's Room by Emma Donoghue, and I've read this book already, but I just wanted to have a hard copy. And I think this is the only book I've read that I bought. Next is The Singles Game by Lauren Weisberger. I'm sorry, Lauren, but she's the author of The Devil Wears Prada. And then Jojo Moyes After You. I actually wanted to pick up Me Before You, but then the book cover was of Emilia Clarke. Although Emilia Clarke is gorgeous, I just don't like the idea of romance novels movie covers instead of book covers. I like the book covers, or the original book covers, instead of the movie covers plastered around it. But then thankfully I didn't pick it up because I actually have Me Before You already with the original book cover. Thankfully I didn't pick that one up, or else I would end up having 2 copies. Next is, I know I said I don't like movie covers on the book covers, but the next couple ones are not cheesy, so it's okay. And also Emily Blunt is amazing. This one is The Girl on the Train, which I also have read already. Another book review for the next couple of weeks, or Sundays. And then we have Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. I bought the part 2 of this book. I don't know why I bought the part 2 without having read the part 1. And that's it for the reasons. Solely because I'm familiar with them. So quite related to the reason of familiarity, I'm actually familiar with Stephen King. I mean, who isn't? But I actually haven't read any of his creations or his books, so I decided to pick up It and Revival. And can you see how intimidating that is? It's so thick. Hopefully the font size is 14 or 16. I don't know. But this thick for 190? Amazing. Next genre is fiction books that my brother wanted to read. This is the Immortal series, and he actually doesn't have the complete series, so if you have the other books, please holler at me or else we'll buy it from you, I guess. I don't know. He has The Everlasting, The Night Star, and The Dark Flame. I don't know the other books from this series. And he also has Alison Noel's Dreamland and Shimmer, another book series which I think is not complete. So if you have, holler. These next set of books are fiction books that I have no idea existed, and I just like the story at the previews at the back, so I picked them up. And I won't elaborate about them, but I will on my book reviews for the next few Sundays. So first is Lost for Words by Edward St. Aubin. This is Look Who's Back, a parody of Hitler waking up in summer 2011 and becoming a YouTuber. This is The Reluctant Bride. And then Before We Met by Lucy Whitehouse. Hannah Riley has seized her chance at happiness until the day her husband doesn't come home. And then another pretty book cover, England's Lane by Joseph Connolly. 3 married couples, each living in England's Lane, each with an only child and each attending to family and their livelihoods. Each of them living a lie, disguising sin, and coping in the only way they know how. This next one is Flawed, which I think is a 2-part series. This next one is Queen's Gambit, and I picked this up because it's about Tudor England. which I was reading about before I visited Big Bad Wolf that day. And then another about a royalty, The Marriage Game, which is a novel of Queen Elizabeth I. And then I picked up these fiction books from Big Bad Wolf in Manila. I actually got to go because it was supposed to be Paramore's concert and then they cancelled, so my friend and I decided to go to Big Bad Wolf. First is Mitch Albom's Timekeeper, Lucky. The Seeing, I think it's a crime story. The Vanishing Act of Esme Lennox. What Maisie Knew, and The Confessions of Edward Day. All seems to be about crimes. Let's move on to my National Bookstore book haul, and after the preview day I was so sad I didn't get to pick up Rainbow Rowell's Carry On. I returned the day after, or during the first public day of Big Bad Wolf, and it was out of stock. So I went on an online shopping spree and picked up all of Rainbow Rowell's, or at least most of Rainbow Rowell's books. Carry On, Landline, and Fangirl. I think there's another one by her which is Attachments, and I may pick it up, although the reviews weren't quite nice, so I decided to not get it yet. And then another book which has been on my list for some time now is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Bleep, and It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. And last but not the least is I decided to visit National Bookstore last week, I think, and that was a bad idea because I found these books lying around with, again, discounts from their 75th anniversary thank you sale. And after reading The Girl on the Train, I actually wanted to read this one, Gone Girl, and that's why I went in National Bookstore, and unfortunately got a lot more than I wanted. So Gone Girl, which only is now $200. And this one is The Girl Who Smiled Beads. I think is a book after the war in Rwanda. I'm not sure, but I'm gonna talk about it on my Sunday review. Next is Perfect, which I think is, or I know is, the part 2 of Flawed. And then everyone's been talking about Neil Gaiman and American Gods, and I was just so curious and so heartbroken that there wasn't any Neil Gaiman at the Big Bad Wolf, so I picked up this book set in National Bookstore. It has American Gods and Nancy Boy's Neverwhere and Stardust. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed the book haul, and I'll see you every Sunday with a book review. Bye!